Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of So How'd You Get Here? Today is sort of a special episode, and to tell you why, I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Tony Defrancesco.
Hey guys, welcome. So I have a real good buddy in town, and he's on the show today, and you know him from Dodgeball, wrote and directed that, Central Intelligence, We're the Millers, the biggest movie ever on Netflix right now, Red Notice.
Never heard of it.
And it's even more special because we are now in season 2 of So How'd You Get Here. We're now coming to you from Hollywood. We were in Burbank, now we're in Hollywood. So same setup, same look. Hopefully, clearly we have Rawson Thurber. So that's bigger star now. We got some star power coming in. So welcome to the show, good buddy. Rawson, thanks for coming in, buddy.
Tony, thanks for having me, man. Good to see you. Angelo, how are you, sir?
Hi. We just met, we're still very professional here.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here, and I love the new digs.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm going to actually let Tony, since you guys play football together and have some history, I'm going to let him kind of lead the way here, and I'm going to chime in every now and then if I have a really cool question I think I want to ask.
Love it. So since the show is So How'd You Get Here, I know you more on a personal level, but I never really heard like the background of kind of how you broke into entertainment.
Sure.
I know you're born and raised in San Fran, but then you went to college in New York and came back and went to grad school at USC. So let's kind of start there.
Sure. Born and raised in the Bay Area. I was born in San Francisco in the city proper, and then raised in the East Bay in a little town called Orinda, which is through the Caldecott Tunnel, if you're familiar. And then went to undergraduate school at Union College in Schenectady, New York, and I graduated in the 1900s, and then went to USC for grad school, a 2-year Master of Fine Arts program called the Peter Stark Producing Program, which is a 2-year program that's focused on producing, not necessarily writing or directing.
Okay.
I guess for me, I'd always loved movies from a very young age, and they were always really important in my family. Some of my earliest memories are of my mom taking us to see movies, and she would always, when we were driving home from the theater, she would ask us about, what was your favorite scene, what was your favorite moment. And so I started to think about movies as a collection of scenes, and once you think about them in that way, then it's a very short step to somebody has to write those scenes. There's an architect behind them, right? So, I still, like, one of my very earliest memories was, I guess I must have been, 7 maybe, and I was in the lobby, and my mom had taken me to see Raiders of the Lost Ark, and she said, this movie's really exciting. And I remember there was like a buzz in the lobby. People were like hustling to get their popcorn, and it's so rare where you have that kind of little energy. But I could feel it. And my mom said, look, this movie's really exciting, and you're not going to want to go to the bathroom during it, so you better go pee right now. And my eyes were like big as saucers. And the point of the story is I went pee. I guess I did.
You did not miss the movie.
By yourself, or did you need help?
I think I managed.
Well, hey, that's a win.
Right at 7, it's not bad.
That's big.
So so I did not urinate in my pants during the film, is the point. But anyways, so she took us out of school when Return of the Jedi came out. Like, we missed school to go see it. So they always had a place of importance in our family. And both my parents were book hounds, so they read a lot, and so I read a lot. And I could always write from a pretty early age. I don't know exactly how or why, but I always could. And I would, there were a couple times where I would write something that my sister would pass off in her high school class. I'd write it in junior high or 5th or 6th grade, and she would, pass it off as hers. So at any rate, my sister's a terrible student. That's all the point of that.
Was there a barter system? Like, if you write a paper for her, she doesn't tell mom and dad you snuck out?
No, I wish I was that smart. I was just sort of like, kind of naive about the whole thing. And she liked it. She's like, oh, I'll submit this for my creative writing class. I was like, okay. So there's
some writing credits on IMDb that are due you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We got to clean that up.
We'll clean that up later.
Thank you. Right. So at any rate, I could always write from an early age. Movies were important, and then I think it was really in undergraduate school at Union when I was in English and a theater arts double major. So I learned about I read a bunch, obviously, all the class, and I was a classics minor, so I read a lot of Greek and Roman tragedies, and certainly Mr. Shakespeare, etc., and everything else, right? I read a bunch, and then I took like my first directing class at Union. Patrick Stanley, one act, I think, and I'd never directed before, but it was just a 2-man show, but I instantly had opinions about about everything, about how they should move and what they should do and why this works here. And I remember distinctly, just like from my first rehearsal as a quote unquote director, I just was elated, and and was so excited, and I felt like I wouldn't quite say it was my quote unquote calling, but I felt like this is something I love, and I don't know why yet, but I want to keep learning.
What made you choose Union?
My dad went there.
Oh, okay.
My dad went to Union College. He's from Vermont, and he ended up there. He went to Boston College first, and then transferred to Union, and it was one of the schools that I visited. I had some other options, but I wanted to go away from California, and I wanted a different experience. And at the time, they were offering me, they wanted me to play on their football team, and that's something I really loved. So I played 1 year of Division III football, and I wasn't particularly good. I mean, I was an above average high school player,
right?
Just above average, and I was a below average Division III college player, and so very quickly in that first year of college, I was like, oh, this is not. I'm not going pro, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going pro or anywhere near it, and I just got interested in other stuff. So I stopped playing football after my freshman year, and I ran for class president. I was, it was in school politics, and I had a radio show, and I wrote for the paper, and I...
Sounds like you didn't have time to play football.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. So blah, blah, blah. I just did a lot of stuff, and I took this directing class, and I wrote, for my senior thesis, I wrote and directed a short film. And I knew nothing about how to do anything, but we did, and there wasn't really a film program at Union College, so I had to create a club in order to get funding. So I created a club called the Visual Landscape Artists, and basically misappropriated those funds to make my short film.
As long as there's some plants and shrubs in your short film, that's technically not lying.
There
right?
you go. So I got people to sign up for the club who weren't in the club. I got the money. I bought the cameras. We went and shot it, but I just didn't know, had no instruction, and just kind of wrote this little thing, cast it out of people, at Union, and then I went to there was like a deck-to-deck editing machine in the local Schenectady, New York.
The old moviolas?
No,
splicing film?
No, I did cut on a moviola and a flatbed and a steam deck with a grease pencil and tape and the whole thing. But this was this was like VHS tapes.
Okay, gotcha.
Right,
gotcha.
like you would do at a news broadcast, right? So it was like the local public broadcasting place that we went. And so I was cutting tape to tape, and you'd set an in point and an out point, and it wasn't great.
This is what, late 90s?
This is 90s.
So there's no like YouTube, you're not following anything. You're just like,
there's nobody to teach you anything, right?
Yeah, right.
I got email my senior year, and it was like Matrix email. It was like green and black, So you're rubbing two sticks together. I still, we had to look stuff up. I have
an old Mac.
Oh, yeah?
The 512 megabytes in that office. I'll show you when we're done.
I want to see that.
That was the first Oregon Trail. That was the first game I
ever
played on a computer.
Oh, man. It's the greatest. So at any rate, I made this short film, and cast it with everybody in there. It's a terrible short film. It's called Palaver, and I remember I had to screen it for my grade, right? We had an auditorium, and there's 300 seats in the auditorium, and the school's really small. It's like 2,000 students, 2,200 students, really, really small. And so I tell everybody, hey, I'm playing at 8:00, tonight, come on by. I was just going to screen it for my professor, and anybody else, the cast, whoever want to show up. And so I open the doors, and my professor's there. 10 people kind of come in, and I have this sensation that I've never felt before. Like my heart starts pounding, and I'm like, oh God, I'm going to show this thing. This is like, I had no concept that I was about to like screen a movie.
And once the sweat hits, you realize, oh no, what have I done?
It never occurred to me until I literally, people started walking in that they were going to watch this thing. and then 10 people turned into 20 people, turned into 50 people. Then it's 100. Then the place is full. And then more people are coming.
How long is this short film?
It's like, I don't know, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It's nothing, right? But like, I'm like dying. And I was like, oh God, I've made a big mistake. Like, they don't know. No. They don't understand. Like, I literally finished this an hour ago. Like,
But also, there's no film program, so like you probably can only get an A. No, they don't know the difference. They're not going to give you an F. Like, hey, he made a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was essentially a pass-fail kind of situation. But I did think I got an A actually. But for no apparent reason. Like the movie, I promise you, is not very, very good.
Can we find that anywhere?
I hope not.
How do we get a copy? I know you have one on your phone. Don't lie.
Calling Union College tomorrow.
And then we played. So I was so nervous that we played. I closed the door. I walked out. I wasn't in the auditorium when it played. I was like really, really having a hard time. And then I heard people start laughing. And it's a comedy, so it was good.
I was gonna say,
yeah. So, it was comedy.
Wasn't a drama.
No, God no. And they start laughing, and then I feel my body relax, and I go in and I watch it play, and it's not very good, but people are seeing themselves on screen, so it's like, hey, it's like a home movie, basically, right? And so people are laughing and and it was just, it was just an absolute narcotic experience, and I was like, oh, I really like this, and I want to do this more and get better because I'm not good. And
you knew that though right away.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I for better or worse, I think I have a pretty good sense of what's good and what's not good. And I was pretty sure my thing was not good, and it wasn't.
Was that something you would use to get into grad school?
No. Well, fortunately, the Peter Stark program, you didn't have to provide any proof of talent. Which would have instantly disqualified me. So you had to take your ACTs. My board scores were fine. My GPA was fine. It was high threes, and and I had a really good interview and wrote a pretty good essay, I think. And so
why USC? I know obviously it's amazing for film, but not NYU, or did you think about other schools?
I looked at other schools.
Okay.
Looked at UCLA, looked at AFI, looked at NYU, and they all required a short film or a script or something, and I didn't really have one. I mean, I had Palaver, but I didn't.
Right.
It wasn't going to get me anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and the Peter Stark program didn't have that, and it was only 2 years and not 3. So I liked that, and that it gave an overview of the film business, right? Because I didn't know anything or anybody, and it was like it was 2 years, and it would teach you, screenplay structure. How the business works, like what happens when you pay your $10 at the box office and how that gets split up. And so it was this incredible kind of 10,000 foot view of how the town itself works.
Oh, awesome.
And so I came, and they only take 25 students. It was really small, technically harder to get into than Harvard Law School in terms of percentages.
Right.
And so I went and right out of undergrad into grad, nothing after, and met my other 24 classmates and made some lifelong friends, some dear friends that are still my closest friends to this day. And I learned. I took a story class from this fabulous instructor named Babette Buster.
Oh, Babette Buster, yeah.
Yeah. So she's awime and taught me.
She breaks down Shawshank a lot of times.
I've been through that
class,
and I think Babette's incredible, and I use what I learned from her, every day in my writing. but I disagreed with almost everything she said most of the time, but it was that disagreement that helped me focus and understand my own.
But you also knew why, though.
Yeah, I thought I did.
Started to develop taste.
Yeah, I started to develop like an approach and a way of thinking about story, a film story versus novels or whatever. And so that was super helpful. That class was incredible. My dear friend Pete Corelli, who is a screenwriter, a really successful screenwriter, he wrote The Proposal. He wrote Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, I was just going to say Crazy Rich Asians. Pops out.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. And he and I were in the same class, and he's the godfather to my eldest daughter. And so we both sort of cut our teeth in that same space. And so a lot of times, if I'm trying to figure out a story thing, I'll call him up and pitch him the thing, and he's incredibly smart about this stuff. And I'd like to say he does the same for me, but it's really like it's really like 80-20, in terms of like me calling Pete for help and Pete calling me for help. But
put him in your next movie. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
So at any rate, I hope I'm not going too far in the weeds here.
No, actually, if it's okay, I'd like to pause at that.
Sure.
And it's a kind of a hard question to frame, but as you're starting to take craft seriously, you're in writing classes, and you're probably studying light, cameras, other things. Are there any clues where you're like, I love lighting and I always loved photography as a kid, or I talked to myself in the shower about a scene or in the car on the way there, and now I'm getting to do that? Were there clues where you're learning you already naturally did something and now you're just learning how to harness it? It was kind of there or needed to be developed. It's more of, as you start to find your voice and your feet.
Yeah.
Were there anything like, oh, I already do that, or I'm naturally good at writing, obviously? Like, make the connection.
I think that it was definitely not lighting and camera or direction for me.
Copy that.
Right. Which is stuff that I've worked really hard at getting better at. And I think my movies have gotten better photographically as I've progressed. Certainly the genres have changed, allowing for more adventure in that space. But for me, it was always storytelling. Storytelling. When I was a young kid, 12, 13, 14, 11, whatever, I played role-playing games with my buddies, right? So whether it was Dungeons and Dragons or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatever, but I was always the game master. I was always the one coming up with the story. And I think that was probably the earliest building blocks of learning how to tell a story that keeps the attention of your three buddies on a Friday night. I've thought through this whole story for a week beforehand, trying to figure out how to like entice them, and then I know them specifically, so I'm like, oh, he's gonna not like this, and that's gonna bother him, so I'm gonna make sure that happens, and
yeah,
right. So manipulating your audience, right?
Yeah.
So I cut my teeth there, and I think that helped me in understanding the sort of magic trick of storytelling, especially film storytelling, the manipulation of the audience that's so important in comedy and horror and really any genre.
Also, if you're boring to your friends, they'll tell you right there.
Oh yeah, well they'll get up and walk away.
Yeah,
like, let's go do something else, right? And so I, it's just hours and hours and hours of storytelling and interactive storytelling. So you get that instant feedback of like, well, I don't believe this, right? I don't think that character would ever do that, So, so back to your, Angelo, back to your question of at the Peter Stark program, I would always think in story terms, and my brain doesn't really turn off, as my wife will tell you. Like, it's always sort of spinning, and I'm always it sounds like you have
in a
good
way. In a good way.
I think
you
so.
just learn to curb it or hide it so that people can't
Were
tell.
you constantly writing while you're in this program? Like, did you have a script in mind that you were kind of just always working on?
Yeah, well, yes.
Not for class, but like for you.
Well, in your first year, one of the things you do for the Peter Stark program is you create, you have a thesis at the end of your second year, which is essentially a screenplay, a budget, a cast, and a marketing plan.
Okay.
And so you graduate with, essentially a saleable package, in finger quotes. I mean, I don't think any thesis has ever been made, but the idea of having all of your ducks in a row. And so I remember in 1997, when I graduated from Union College, I was getting ready that summer to go to Peter Stark to USC, and I bought Final Draft. Right. And I think I had
the first one.
The first one. Yeah.
Because there's like 11.
No. I think it was like Final Draft 1.
Wow.
Right. And it was black and white on my, on my laptop. I had a laptop at that point with like the little ball in the middle.
Fancy.
Yeah.
The little cursor.
Yeah. And I distinctly remember opening my first Final Draft document and typing fade in and my heart pounding. Like that's how excited I was. And I wasn't expecting that. And I remember vividly that feeling. And that was for me at least, a really good indicator that I was on the right track, right? That I was doing something. Well, I don't know if I would have any success, but at least I knew that it was something that I had passion for.
Yep.
Because when you said your sister with the writing, the movie and the screening, the turning on Final Draft, anytime you have a little bit of nerves and excitement, it sounds like that's kind of where you're firing in your sweet spot.
I guess so. I'd never thought of it that way, Angelo.
And that might be a bad way to frame it.
But I think that's.
Do you find that happening in like in the films you've done?
Yeah, it's when you're writing like now I'm writing stuff that I'm likely gonna go shoot as opposed to. Like who knows, right?
Yeah, right.
And so that's a slightly different feeling, but a lot of times you still get excited with a great turn of phrase or a great surprising moment, And what's interesting at least for me about all the stuff that I've done, I write and direct everything, or I've rewritten the script. Many times significantly, sometimes less so, but my first chance to direct is when I'm writing the script, and that process is super exciting. What's weird about it is like you start by yourself, right? It's you and flashing cursor, right? And you're just grinding, right? You're just thinking it through, and you're frustrated, and sometimes you have a great writing day, and sometimes you have a poor writing day, and all of that stuff, right? So you're all by yourself, right? Yeah. And then the process opens up, right? And you show it to your producers, you show it to your actors, the studio, more people become involved, and then if you're lucky, you get to go get it made, and then it's 500 people are involved. It's not just you and your cursor. And then you make the movie, right? And then it narrows back again, and it's just you and your editor or editors. So it's maybe 15 people in your circle as you're doing the final rewrite on your movie, right? You're telling your final version of the story, and then when you're done, it goes out to the world, and it can be hundreds of millions of people, like Red Notice. It's a very surreal experience in so many ways, but we can talk about that later if you'd like.
So you're in the program, you graduate.
Yes. So I started writing my first script, which was not good. Not good. It was a
by your standards, or they told you it wasn't good?
It's probably not good.
Yeah.
But here's what I
respect your honesty and candor, sir.
It was not good. But I think what it showed was facility on the page. Like I could write, the writing on the page was good, and the way the story moved was good in terms of like how it, fooled the audience or surprised or whatever. It was basically a thriller, right? And then. And I wrote it, and I'm like, this is great. This is going to be, they're going to want this, right? Because I did it as my thesis. And then, like, I was like, they're going to want this. And then all the thesis advisors read it, and they're like, yeah, it's not a bad, it's all right. Congratulations, good luck. I'm like, nobody's making an offer? I was sick. And so, looking back, like, wow. And so
fall from grace.
I know. But I could hit, right? Like, I could write on the page. It just wasn't a good script. And then I graduated, and in your second year of the Peter Stark program, they set you up with an internship during the day. So their classes are at night. So I worked at William Morris before it was William Morris Endeavor as essentially an assistant or a floater from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Then I'd get in my $800 Toyota Corolla and drive to USC for my classes at night from 7:30 to 10:30,
Right.
and do it all over again. So it was a long year.
For a year.
A year, yeah.
Wow.
And it was a long time, but I got to be I worked at this agency, and I was so happy to do it. I never wanted to be an agent, of course. And about 8 seconds into being there, I was like, oh, definitely don't want to be an agent. Like, it is a very hard job, and it's really for a specific personality type, which I am not. And but I learned a lot about how agents work and how representation works, and I thought, you can choose. At the time, you could sort of apply to work at a studio or a production company or an agency. And to me, the agency was the only choice, because it's the hub, right? Everybody connects to the agency, so I would learn everything. And it was a fabulous internship, and I learned a ton, met a bunch of people who are now titans of industry in town. But one thing that came out of that was there's a screenwriter, fantastic screenwriter named John August, who has a podcast called Script Notes along with Craig Mazin, which is an excellent podcast. Not as good as this one, of course, but
not many are.
And at any rate, so John was looking for an assistant. He was a Peter Stark grad, and I applied. And I called everybody I knew. And I didn't hear anything. And then I thought it was a no-go. And then I got my phone rang, and it was John. And he said, look, I got your resume from like 3 different places, so we should probably meet. And met with him, and he hired me, and I was his assistant for about 2.5 years.
What was he working on at the time?
He had just finished Go.
Okay.
And he was working on Charlie's Angels and Big Fish.
Yep.
And he did some rewrites on Jurassic Park, I think, and Minority Report.
Oh, wow.
So he was just like,
on fire.
Yeah. And deservedly so. He's a fantastic screenwriter. But what I got to learn was what it looks like to be a professional screenwriter in town. And it looks like a lot of hard work, right? It's your ass in the seat every day. And it's not, there's this old saying, inspiration is for amateurs and professionals sweat, and that's what it is. Like, it's you sit down and you do the work. There's no trick to it, right?
Yeah.
And so seeing how he did that, how he managed the notes from producers and studios, and how he dealt with stars, and I just learned so much. And he was so kind to me, and it was this incredible incubator where, when you're the assistant to basically a featured screenwriter, there's not a ton to do, other than, like, if you can answer the phone without hurting yourself, and schedule premieres and pitches and whatnot. So I had a lot of time to work on my own stuff, which is what John wanted and what he supported, and still does. And he's certainly gotten a little bit bigger in terms of his business, but at any rate, so I wrote my second script, which was sort of an action picture, and it was not good. And I remember,
you say that a lot, but your stuff keeps doing really well.
No. Well, the first one didn't do anything.
Oh, okay.
And the second one, so I gave it to John. I wrote it, and I gave it to John, and this is my memory of it.
And he was willing enough to read anything you wrote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he'd say, look, when you're ready, I'm here.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy he was, and still is. And so I gave him the script over the weekend, and I was sweating bullets, and I came in on Monday morning. And this is my memory of it. He probably would say, I never did that. And my memory is, he comes in, he's holding the script in his hand, and he throws it on the desk, and he goes, nope. And he walked out.
That was your note?
Yeah.
Nope.
Wow.
And I went, oh, fuck. Like that. I think he gave me some notes, but it was.
He gave you a pat on the back. And
it's
nope.
essentially that, right? And so I was
have you not learned anything?
I know. I was devastated. And so then, but what I learned is that, like, I wrote a thriller and I wrote an action film, and I wasn't writing comedy, and I loved comedy, and it mattered. But I think the reason I wasn't doing that is because if I failed writing a comedy, that would be really hard for me.
Oof.
because I love it so much, and
Yeah.
I respect it so much. And it was okay to write a shitty thriller or a shitty action movie. Everybody does that.
Because that's not your real thing, and you can
Yeah,
always
I'm not really putting myself out there, right?
Right.
Like, it's like, this is like how they do them, right? Like, kind of like this, right? And so, and
safety net.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and as you know, or as anybody knows who's tried this, like, if you start from a place of writing from the outside in, you're fucked, right? So, like, if you're writing like hey, this will sell, or hey, other people like these kinds of movies,
Right.
so here, I'll do it. You're absolutely fucked.
So you mentioned Raiders and Return of the Jedi when you were a kid. Like, what were some of the comedies that like inspired you?
Oh my God.
I know it's probably too long of a list.
No, I mean, I mean, how long do you get? But it's Revenge of the Nerds, one of my all-time favorites, perfectly structured film. I took my mom to see it in a theater, and it's R-rated, by the way. And she balled up napkins and threw them at me the whole time. She was so embarrassed that I would bring her to this movie and that I had seen it at my age. Ghostbusters, obviously.
Yes.
You know, Caddyshack Stripes.
You Big Trouble in Little China fan at all?
You know, I never was. I watched it recently, and it doesn't quite hold up.
Take it back right now.
It's perfect. What did I say?
Yeah.
That's
Perfect,
right.
yeah.
That's what I thought you said.
I mean, you know, there's so many great comedies.
What's a few movies that you still watch to this day, like routinely or ritualistically? Once a year, you watch your favorite.
Oh, well, I mean, my favorite film of all time. It's maybe not the best film, but my personal favorite film of all time is Bull Durham. Ron Shelton, gem. It does everything right and nothing wrong, which is so rare. So Bull Durham, Raiders, obviously, whenever it's on, you have to watch it.
Right.
Hoosiers, I'll watch anytime.
Oh, Gene Hackman, yeah.
Oh my God. Rudy, I'll watch anytime it's on.
That's one of Ryan's favorite films.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about?
Yeah, right.
I mean, there's just a bunch that you're just like, oh, I'll just watch a little bit, and then you just
watch
the
whole
whole
thing.
Yeah, of course.
Got it.
So when did you realize that, like, hey, I should start writing what I love?
Well, it was basically after my second script where I'm like, oh God, like if I'm gonna strike out, I should just strike out with my own bat. You know, like I should write something that I think
That's
is
a good
funny.
point of view.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I started writing a movie about adults hitting each other with balls. Like I wrote Dodgeball. At the time, it was called Underdogs, and I wrote it, and it was just something that I thought was funny. Like I've always loved sports, and I've always loved comedy, and it was sort of, I didn't want to write like, you know, a softball beer league movie or like a soccer movie. I didn't want to write anything with a sport that anybody could take seriously, because the movie wasn't serious. It was, you know, it was essentially a satire of sports films in some sense. And so I wrote it. I used the same rules that Mr. Little taught me in junior high PE, you know, and I love dodgeball, but when you say dodgeball to somebody, you know, they either break into a smile or they break into a sweat, but either
depending on how good they were in school.
Yeah, that's right. I always loved it. And so, so at any rate, I wrote Dodgeball, and this is, so I wrote Dodgeball, and
may I ask just roughly how long from idea to at least first draft? What was that process for you? 6 months, 3 months?
Yeah, I would say 6 is probably right.
And were you still an assistant?
Yeah, still working for John, and then
and working on the weekends probably. So you busted your ass for at least 3 straight years without stopping
easily.
Yeah,
and you know, and not going out and working, and the first draft of Dodgeball was like 154 pages, you know, which just shows you that I, you know, just didn't plan properly.
It's a 2-part sequel. It's like Avatar. It's fine.
But you know, I've just you know, there's a couple of ways to approach a first draft, right? Which is you can either just start writing and see what happens, and then once you finish, then you figure out what you did, and then you
condense it,
that. Or you can, you know,
save the cat.
You can plan, and then write, and you're typically closer to the mark at that point. I remember I went and heard these two. In the same week, on a Monday and a Wednesday, I heard Gary Ross speak about screenwriting at the Academy. He was getting an award for being a fantastic screenwriter, which he is. And then I heard Scott Frank speak at a little black box kind of screenwriting talk. And Gary Ross talked about how he outlined, you know, for 6 months, and he had, you know, 500 note cards and, you know, a 90-page outline and and then he starts to write, and the scripting takes a few weeks, right? And I sitting in the theater just like my palms were sweating.
You're like, I didn't do that.
I'm like, I don't do that. Like my brain doesn't work like that.
Right.
I'm never gonna, this is never gonna work because I don't do that. And he's Gary Ross, and I am definitely not Gary Ross. And then I heard Scott Frank speak, and he's like, I don't outline. I don't know anything about theme. I don't know what a theme is. I torture my friends with drafts until they won't call me back anymore. And I was like, yes,
that's me.
That's what I
so
do.
I was like, so I was like, okay. So, and I've now found my way to a place where, just through experience, that I don't ever write a 154-page draft anymore. That essentially, like, if you're going from, Los Angeles to New York, right? I know where I'm headed. I know I'm going to hit Chicago in the middle, and then I want to hit, Salem, and then I'm going to go up. I know the places,
Right, the beats.
But in between, I personally enjoy time for discovery. I have less time now to do it that way, and I have to be a little more prescriptive. But for me, like a really thorough outline steals some of the joy of the process for me, not for everybody. So, anyways, I'm with John, and I'm writing Dodgeball, and I finished Dodgeball, and I cut it down. This is 2000-ish.
Okay.
Right. And then at the same time, I wrote a tiny little short script that I thought was funny, which is called Terry Tate Office Linebacker.
I've seen that.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that right?
We've seen it,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So just tackling people at
Yeah.
Terry Crews, right?
Yeah.
At 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Professional athlete.
Yeah, it's basically about a CEO of a company who hires a 6'6", 300-pound linebacker to tackle people in the office who aren't doing their job, and it made me laugh, and I wrote it, and then this is right when the internet was beginning, right? And they were like, hey, we need content for this thing. So the halcyon days, like YouTube didn't exist, nothing, right? And so this company that's now defunct, I believe, called Propaganda, gave us a little bit of money to go shoot it. And so I shot this thing called Terry Tate Office Linebacker. I found this guy, Lester Spate, who was amazing. He, I put an ad in Backstage West. This is how old it is. And he was amazing, and just the perfect casting. We went and shot it. I cut it with this guy, DJ Ramirez, who had a hot rod shop in Sunnyvale. And so I would drive an hour and a half north to cut in the back of his hot rod shop with him.
That's awesome.
It was freezing cold. And we worked on the thing. And so anyways, we made this short film at the same time that I was writing Dodgeball. And this is all gonna, I think, come together if you bear with me.
I believe you. You're a storyteller. I'm tracking. Keep going.
So I gave Underdogs to John, and I was sweating again through the weekend.
That's a marker that you're doing something right.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh fucking hell. And then I'm there early Monday, like tapping my foot, and I hear the door open, and John's there, and my heart's like dung 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 dung, and he walks in. And he puts the script on the desk, and he says, "This is very funny. We should talk." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And so John really loved it, and he thought it was gonna be great, and gave me some notes that were super smart. And then we sent it to his fabulous agent at UTA, who read it and it just did not want to represent me.
Wow.
And then a couple other agents at UTA called me to tell me that they also didn't want to represent me.
They called you. That was very nice of them.
That's very nice. Yeah, they were like, we've read your script. We also, for whatever it's worth, do not want to represent you. And I was like, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, I guess.
They just said #nope.
Yeah, it was just like, but it was, I think it was tried out of respect for John as a client.
Right.
I don't know. But at any rate, a friend of mine was an assistant to an agent at Paradigm, a great agent named Mark Ross, who read the script and liked me and liked the script. And I went out to meet him at this party in Malibu. There's like a beach party in Malibu. He's like, come on out. And so I went out to meet Mark Ross, and I was like, this is like Hollywood stuff. Like, it's a Hollywood party. And anyway, so he signed me, and I had my first agent based on that script. And we sent it out. I went to Big Five, and I bought 20 red rubber balls, and I hand stenciled the word Underdogs on each one. I still have one, and we sent it out to 20 places, and everybody said no. They would say no in the same way.
When you say 20 places, are they studios? Are they production companies?
Production companies is where we went first, and we didn't go to studios. I can't quite remember. I don't think we sent to studios. We were trying to get a production company on to bring it to the studio. And I was attached to direct it, and because I said so, and so they would all say no in the same way. They would say like, "Look, we think it's super funny. but we're never going to make your movie.
Because of you attached to it?
No, just because like we don't think anybody wants to see this. It's very, very funny and well written, but nobody wants to see this, and we also don't validate parking. And I was like, fuck me. And it cost me like $6, and I didn't have $6 a meeting to like lose. And so
plus all the dodgeballs you already sent out.
It's not cheap. And so I'd written the hero role for Vince Vaughn because I loved Swingers, like that changed my life. And I wrote, and every so often I'd be writing in my crappy little apartment off of Melrose, and I'd be at a coffee shop and I'd see Vince walk by and I'd be like, I know something you don't know. I'm writing like a creepy screenwriter. And then, super creepy. And
passionate. The word you're looking for is passionate.
What did I say? Yes.
Creepy.
Yes, passionate is what
passionate.
And I wrote the villain role for for Ben. And I didn't know Ben, but I'm a huge fan of the Ben Stiller show. Like I loved it in high school and loved, just loved all of his stuff. I was massive Ben Stiller fan. And a few other roles. I wrote the Justin role for Justin Long and the Kate Beach role for Christine Taylor, who I just thought was a super talented comedian. So we decided to send it to Red Hour, which was Ben's company. Everybody said no, essentially twice, and then we sent it to Red Hour
with a dodgeball.
I think we were out of dodgeballs.
There you go.
So maybe that was the problem.
That might have been it.
So sent it to his company rather. The receptionist there, his name was Will, read it and liked it. Who gave it to the junior executive, Rhodes Rader, who read it and liked it. Who gave it to Stuart Kornfeld, who read it and liked it, Ben's producing partner. Who gave it to Ben, who read it and liked it. Who met me and liked me. And that's how Dodgeball began. And so
to be clear, just a 10-second recap. You got told nope.
20 times.
20 times, then some more no's, then changed the script, shot something with a little bit on your own to prove that you could direct, and then got told 20 more no's, and then had to jump through probably 7, 8, 9, 10 more hurdles just to get the meeting, which you might not even guarantee a job.
Yes, correct. But
so it's really easy when you get a movie made. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to drive at.
Yeah, it's an iceberg, right? Like when you go to a theater and you see a film, you're seeing that top little 10%, whatever that is. Right. But there's this whole iceberg of effort that happens below the water that no one will ever see and no one will ever know about. So at any rate, at the same time that was happening, Terry Tate. We finished the short film and it became one of those things in town where this is before the internet. So people were passing the tape around, right? In the same way, I mean, it wasn't as good, but in the same way as like I had people from Colorado send me Matt and Trey's first short film about Jesus versus Santa Claus.
Yeah. Right.
Where it's just like my friend John Treater from high school it was a Boulder guy, sent me this tape, black VHS tape with like no label on it. I thought it was porn. He's like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, Jesus. I put it in and it was the Matt and Trey thing and it was just so funny.
Yeah.
So anyways, people were handing around VHS tapes of Terry Tate. I was working Dave Bardis and Doug.
Because Greg Wilson, one of my best friends, he worked for Gary Marshall for years. We were roommates, and I saw that because he was like, Angelo, come here. This is what I want to do to some of the people that work in my office. And I remember leaning over the couch and I'm just like, what am I watching? And then just smash out of left field. I'm like, I like this. What is this? So that's literally how I was introduced to that. It was that simple.
As simple as that. It's
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was a fan, and for reals.
I hear that. So Dave Bardis and Doug Lyman at Hypnotic, the Doug Lyman,
Swingers. I was just gonna say Swingers, all coming around.
Swingers and Go.
Yeah.
I mean, Doug Lyman, like you can put his resume up against anybody's. Like he's rock solid, and so they saw it and loved it, and they're like, hey, we have a partner that we want to show this to, and I was like, great, and they showed it to Reebok, and Reebok saw it, and they said, we don't really know what this is,
but we like it.
But we like it, and here's some money to go make some more. But before that happened, I had submitted Terry Tate to the Sundance Film Festival. Now, if there's anything that does not deserve to be in Sundance, it is Terry Tate. It is the opposite of what Sundance is all about. But I had sent my student film in that I made at USC to Sundance and got a very polite but chilly rejection letter where my name is totally misspelled, like a form letter. And so I framed it and put it in my bathroom. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to submit something every year to Sundance and just get a rejection letter. I'm going to start to wallpaper my bathroom. Like I was going to like videotape myself brushing my teeth for 90 seconds, send it in. Maybe it's art. I don't know.
That'll get in, but the other thing you made won't.
Of course. And so I sent Terry Tate in, and I just, just sincerely for the rejection letter. I mean, if you ever see Terry Tate, you know it doesn't belong there. And I completely forgot about it. And I got a phone call, and I was like, hello. And she said, Rawson? I said, yep. And said, hi, this is Roberta from the Sundance Film Festival. I just want to say congratulations, Terry Tate has been accepted into Sundance. And I was like, who is this? What is that? Like, what? I'd never, and so I got in, and so I went to Sundance to the short film competition, and I bought a puffy jacket, and I'm a filmmaker at Sundance. This is in 2000, right? And I graduated in 99, 2000. I'm a Sundance filmmaker.
By accident,
which was, and it was unbelievable. It was like the coolest thing, right? But at the same time, Reebok has seen Terry Tate, and they're saying, look, if you play it at Sundance, we won't do this. We need to keep this off the charts or off the record until we are ready. And so I had a choice to make about, do I pull my short film from Sundance or do I not? And of course I was like, well, look, I call up Roberta and I'm like, this is what's happening. And she's like, you should pull it. We're so happy for you. This is what we want anyways. Congratulations. And couldn't have been cooler. And, Roberta Monroe, still the coolest. And so I think I might be the only filmmaker in the history of Sundance, a short film competition,
that has pulled
to pull their film. So it like never was shown. And then
I mean, that's a great, I didn't even mean to, and then I got in, and then I immediately had to pull it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like what a
smacked down Sundance.
What a ridiculous move, right? Sundance smacked me down later. We can talk about that.
That's all right. You throw another dodgeball at him, you'll be fine.
So at any rate, so Terry Tate was happening. Reebok gave us money. I went and shot 6 episodes of it, 6 10-minute episodes, wrote more, and we had a real budget. It was unbelievable. And, I mean, it was unbelievable. And then at the same time, Dodgeball was happening. And so and this is all, I promise, is going to come together. So there was the I think it was 2001 Super Bowl, right? So top of January.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Tampa Bay Bucks against the Raiders.
Yep.
Right. And TiVo had just come out. So people had TiVos, right? No YouTube yet. TiVo had come out, and and Reebok had bought 60 seconds on the Super Bowl for Terry Tate, right? Like we didn't know that was their plan. Wow. Like we had finished the thing. We didn't know they were going to do that. And then they called us up and they're like, hey, we're going to put it on the Super Bowl. And we were like, what? Okay, awesome.
Like the Super Bowl?
The Super Bowl,
yeah.
Super Bowl?
Wait, which
like
Super Bowl are we
the
talking
Super Bowl
about?
of nachos? Like what are we talking about? The pet Super Bowl. And so at any rate, the game was a blowout.
Yep.
Terry Tate played, right? We had a big thing in Westwood. All of us came. Terry was there. Lester Spate was there. We enjoyed it, and it was fun. But what was amazing was TiVo the next week or whatever released their viewership totals, and the Terry Tate 60-second spot was the most watched part of that Super Bowl because people kept rewinding it
to watch it over and over again.
No, the game wasn't any good.
Yeah, right.
So they kept watching the thing, right? And then it was on the Reebok website, and that next Monday or Tuesday, it shut down servers on the East Coast because the infrastructure wasn't there, of course, but people kept trying to download and watch the thing. This was like when you had to wait 30 minutes to download the Star Wars trailer. So it's
dial up.
Yeah,
that was still dial up.
Yeah. And then that Friday, Terry Tate rang the closing bell on the New York Stock Exchange. Not kidding. So that's what it was like a thing, and a thing before.
Are you like I made it?
I know. I got interviewed by some people. It was like my first interviews ever, and I was mostly just like it was so surreal.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never thought about.
Yeah, what's happening right
now?
I'm
like, what? Like, this is just literally a thing that I wrote that I thought was going to make me and 10 buddies laugh.
Yeah.
That was it. Like, there was no plan. I just thought it was personal.
Is your agent getting blown up now for you to direct, like, other commercials? Like,
well, it's weird on the agent side because my agent is a feature director's agent and writer, right? So that he had no commercial connection, but I did start directing some commercials. I've never actually found much consistent success in the commercial world. Mm-hmm. But at any rate, so Terry Tate becomes this thing. Dodgeball is moving along. Ben Stiller's company, Red Hour, makes a deal at DreamWorks for the and DreamWorks agrees. Adam Goodman and John Fox there agreed to option Underdog's Dodgeball as basically like a favor, right? They just signed this deal. They want to play nice. It's one of the first things that Red Hour brings to them, and so they option it for the lowest amount of money humanly possible, like legally possible, right? Almost nothing. But it's my first professional job. I got in the WGA because of it, and I start rewriting the script. And I spend a year rewriting the script for them at the same time that Terry Tate's happening and all that.
So when you say you got paid during the WGA, Dodgeball is now at a major studio, Ben Stiller's attached as a production company. Are you still in line to direct this?
Yeah, well, nobody wanted to make it, so they didn't think. I don't think they thought it was important for them to also say that they didn't think I should direct it. But what was happening was that was before Ben was involved, and once Ben believed in me, right?
Got it.
Ben said, "This is I believe in this guy," and part of that has to do with Terry Tate, which is what I'm coming to now, because Terry Tate showed that I knew where to put the camera for physical comedy to work. And I think that was enough for them. And Ben saying, being under Ben Stiller's aegis and him saying, I'll back this guy. Studio is cool. If Ben's cool, they're cool, right? And so, and they were never going to make it anyways. So they, didn't feel like it was important to also kick me in the shins. So I rewrote the script for a year, and it kept getting better, right?
That's good.
Yeah, it kept getting better because of Ben and Stuart. Like, they were really gave great notes, and they were super smart, and I worked my ass off and kept writing it. And I remember John Fox and Adam Goodman saying, "Hey, this is getting good." And we're like, yeah, it's not, it's not homework. Like, we're trying to make a movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we want to make this thing. And Mike DeLuca was there at the time. And so Adam and John really liked it. And they gave it to Mike DeLuca, who really liked it. And he gave it to Walter Parks and I think it's Laurie McDonald, who were running DreamWorks at the time. And I think they put the kibosh on it. I think they felt like, look, DreamWorks doesn't make dodgeball movies. Like, that's not what we do here. We win Academy Awards. And I was like, oh. And so then it was put in turnaround, which is when a studio elects not to make it, they will let you go shop it to other places to make it, but as long as they get reimbursed for their fees plus 10 or 15% VIG, right? So,
but their fees were so low because they paid you nothing.
Nothing. Like, and I was happy to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but it was essentially like half of a cold ham sandwich and like some water. Like, that was the payment. It's like, whatever, man. I'm just happy to be here
selling movies.
Yeah. And so I'll stop talking here in a second. But
no, keep going.
So it went to Fox. All right. And there's an executive there named Debbie Liebling, and who I love to this day. And she came from Comedy Central, and she's the one who found Matt and Trey and brought them in for South Park. And she moved to DreamWorks. And there's a character in Dodgeball that was sort of a shibboleth for me, a litmus test, right? Where if you got this character, you understood the movie, and that's Steve the Pirate, right? Yep. Like, if you understood why that worked in the movie, then you understood the tone, you understood what I was trying to get to, right? And I walk into Debbie's office for my first meeting with her because they like the script, they want to talk about it, and she hugs the script to her chest and she says, "I love Steve the Pirate." And I was like, "I want to marry you."
And you did. No,
and that's my wife. No, but she was just like so smart and such a fighter, and she had to. And this is things that people I think don't understand, is like, it's not just about who the director is or who the stars are. There are these executives who love movies, who work their ass off to get where they are, and they have to fight for your movie internally when you're not there. When people say mean stuff about your script or you or whatever, having those internal champions are so important and so rare. And Debbie Liebling was 100% that. So she had to, in the Darth Vader room at Fox, this long black table with Tom Rothman at one end and Debbie at the other. She's the one who had to stand up and say, "Look, I know this is a dumb comedy, but this is a smart, dumb comedy, and we should make it." And it was because of her, and certainly Ben, and that it costs almost nothing for a studio film. We made it for under 20. and which sounds like a lot, but not considering when you have Ben Stiller and Vince Vaughn, these are big stars at the time, sort of. Ben was a big star, and I had to, plead my case for Vince at the time. Because there's a lot of, what about Ashton Kutcher? I'm like, no, he's great, but he's not the right guy. I wrote it for Vince. And so, and then we went off and made it. And then,
was Dodgeball before Old School?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, Vince isn't really that big of a.
No, yes, I'm almost nearly positive.
Okay.
That was before. Yes. Or when we were getting to, I'd have to check. Or when we were trying to put yeah, please. When we were trying to put
because Dodgeball came out in 04.
Yeah, 04.
So that means you shot it with like 03, 02. Yeah.
03, yeah. But I don't think Old School had come out yet.
Right.
So Vince was not, even though he was a star from Swingers and then Jurassic, like it was still, for whatever reason, a question mark. But
Old School 2003
Yeah.
release, which means they had to at least be filming in 2002.
right. So that
earlier.
so Old School hadn't come out
yet, but you were okay.
Right. So which is a problem I faced many other times. So and this will be the last part of it. Make the movie. The movie's coming out, and here's the thing I didn't know is like you get your release date, right? And this is my first time. I was so green, like I didn't know anything about anything, but I knew what the story was, right? I knew why the story worked. And when you're a first-time director, you don't have edict on your side, right? Like you can't say, "Trust me, I've done this before, it'll work." But what I did have was I knew the story better than anybody because I'd written it for so long, and I understood how it worked and why it worked and what was funny, and if you change this, how that would affect 3 scenes later, etc. Right? So you try to present your case in that way, and you get a lot of support. And Ben was incredibly supportive, and he was tough, but tough in a way that you would want, right? Like it was never about his own vanity; it was about the
best project. I want the best project.
Yeah, exactly. And you have an incredible amount of respect for that man, and I owe him my career. So we found out that we were coming out on the same weekend that Terminal was coming out, which was a Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg film. And when that happens, you're like, shit, like you're like, maybe we can be a plucky number 2, like, and so that Friday night, the movie's coming out, and I, rent a limousine with my buddies and my
You
family.
nervous?
Yeah, nervous.
Or excited? A little bit of both?
Both, yeah, and I mean, I guess I just was so naive. I wasn't naive enough to be super nervous,
right.
But like I was surprised that when people would call me up after they saw the trailer, I'm like, who's watching my trailer? Why? Okay. Like I didn't know anything about anything. I was just trying to make a movie that I thought was fun and funny. And so we start going around, and Dodgeball is sold out, and everywhere we were going, and they were pulling Terminal off screens and putting Dodgeball on screens. And then that Friday night around 11 o'clock, I get a call from Stuart Kornfeld, may he rest in peace, our fabulous producer, and he called and he said, Rawson, Dodgeball is going to make $11 million tonight and $30 million for the weekend. It's going to be the #1 film in America, and congratulations. And I was just like, what?
Did you call DreamWorks back and be like, so I thought you guys make Oscars. How's $30 million?
It was, and that's when $30 million meant something.
Right.
$2004.
Hey, it still does.
No, but DreamWorks, to their credit, Adam Goodman and John Fox sent me a big, like a big sort of gym satchel of red rubber balls, and they said, "We always knew you had the balls. Congratulations."
Oh,
nice.
That's okay.
So
I like them again.
Nice. Super
that was
classy.
great.
Oh yeah,
Very classy.
They're great. And so after that moment, you're a made man at that point, and and then it's up to you to continue or not. But that's, I don't know if I've ever told that story all the way through.
Thank you.
That's why I wanted you to come on here, buddy, because I know you friend-wise, but I never knew like how you actually made it.
Yeah.
Like how you actually got that break, and how hard it was, and all the rejection.
And how lucky.
Yeah.
How absolutely.
But you surrounded yourself with good people, and you worked really hard.
Well, Angelo, that's a really good point. That it's that for me, I think it comes down to success in this town or really any field. I mean, it comes down to 3 things, and it's hard work, luck, and talent.
Yeah,
probably in equal measure. And you can only really control one of those, which is hard work. And so that's what I try to do is work as hard as I can, and the harder you work, the luckier you get.
That's a good perspective. And some of that luck, I think you help move in your favor by working with good people. Yeah, well, that does nudge it a little bit in the right way.
Sure. If you can surround yourself with with good people, with people who are, talented and,
who also want to work as equally as hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I forget who said it, but it's, if you're dumb, surround yourself with smart people, and if you're smart, surround yourself with smart people who disagree with you. And I think that's really important, to surround yourself with people who are not only smart but will challenge you and push you.
Are you around, excuse me, are you around 25 at this time? 26?
I wrote it when I was 26. I wrote Dodgeball when I was 26.
Okay.
And it came out. I started writing, maybe I was 27, 26. And then it came out when I was 28 or 29.
So because
turned 29.
It became so successful and wasn't done on a huge budget, are you now looked at as like a go-to comedy guy, director at that point? Because I know you followed that up with a drama.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you just kept
choice.
doing like comedies.
Yeah.
Did you say bad choice?
Bad choice, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. Oh, terrible. I guess like I made this thing that and I think I was just super freaked out. Like I wasn't expecting what it was, and then I got really scared that I would be pigeonholed as just a broad comedy guy. And for whatever reason, at that point in my life, I thought that was not a good thing, which I don't feel that way now. But and I had this book that I loved called The Mysteries of Pittsburgh, written by Michael Chabon. It was his first novel, Pulitzer Prize winning author, maybe the, greatest living American author presently, and the coolest guy, like the nicest person. And so I wanted to do something that could, would show my range, right?
Okay.
And you're absolutely fucked if that's where you're starting from. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I wrote Michael Chabon essentially a
love letter.
A love letter saying I love this book, and he lives in the Bay Area. That's where I'm from. I'm like, look, I'd love to buy you breakfast and tell you how I will personally destroy your book. and he said,
your comedy is amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. You should stick with that.
Maybe I should. And so I had breakfast and I said, here's what I want to do. It's a pretty radical adaptation of your book, amputation almost. And if this seems like a thing you'd want to do, then I'd love to try. And if you don't want to do this, I'm just a huge fan and thank you. And he said, no, I think it's great. Let's try it. And so I wrote the script for The Mysteries of Pittsburgh. I did it on spec essentially. Made the blacklist, and then we went and made it, and had Nick Nolte, Mina Suvari, John Foster, Peter Sarsgaard in it, and Omid Abtahi, who's fantastic as well, and it wasn't good, and I didn't.
What wasn't good about it? Because if you made the blacklist, it just didn't translate on screen.
Yeah, I didn't do a good enough job directing it. And that's on me. I wasn't ready as a filmmaker to approach it. I hadn't lived enough of a life to approach it. Also,
it's pretty damn mature, man. Most people don't have the eyes to see that or the courage to say that.
Thanks. I just think it's plainly obvious. Like it wasn't good enough, and I wrote it and I directed it, so that's on me, and I got to wear it. And there's a lot of choices that I made as a director that put me in a position to not succeed that I learned from. And I think that I just wasn't the right director for that particular story, that as much as I loved it, I didn't live it. And so I think it was really hard and, super devastating to fail an author that you admire as much as I admire Michael Chabon. Just heartbreaking. And then, you work so hard, and then we brought it to Sundance, back to Sundance, and it played there, and it was an absolute shoulder shrug. Like nobody cared. Nobody, if anybody had any opinion about it, it wasn't a good opinion, right? This is my experience of it. And I do remember after.
Did you try to resubmit Terry Crews?
I should have. Guys, this is
what I really wanted to play.
Exactly. Wait. But I remember leaving Eccles Theater after it screened for the first time, and I was like, oh golly. And I was walking out, and there was one of the volunteers, scooping up snow. This is actually the next morning after it played, and I was coming in, I think, now that I remember it. There's somebody scooping up snow. And she said, hey, are you Rawson? I'm like, yeah. And she said, you did Mysteries of Pittsburgh? And I said, yeah, that was me. And she goes, I love that movie. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. I, like, made my whole, like, I was ready to put a gun, gun in my mouth. So you were the one.
You are the one.
Yeah. Okay. And so for me, like, just eating shit in a real way. So Dodgeball came out in 04. I started shooting Mysteries in 06, which is pretty fast. And then because you had to write it and cast it and finance it and blah, blah, blah. And we shot it all on location in Pittsburgh for, almost nothing, 7 million or under, I think. And then it went to Sundance in top of 08 and died.
Because Sundance is what, usually February?
January, yeah.
January,
and died. So I came back to Sundance as a feature film director, and I should have pulled Mysteries. Excuse me. And so ate shit, and then 2008 is right when the strike was about to happen, the writer's strike, and so I took a bunch of writing jobs, to as everyone was doing right before it was pencils down. So I took 4 different writing jobs stacked up on top, and then started writing when the strike ended. And it took me 2 years to get out from under those writing obligations, and not for me to direct, but just writing stuff for other people. One was for me to direct that didn't quite happen, but at any rate, so then it's 2010 and a half, right? And I haven't had a movie come out since 04. It's 6.5 years. I mean, I had Mysteries came out on like 3 theaters for a half hour.
Successful movie.
Yeah, right. So at that point, I'm ice cold.
Yeah,
absolutely ice cold, right? And these movies that I thought I was going to get made, just never came together. I was hoping to make Magnum PI at Universal as a feature, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, so I was just like in the wilderness, basically.
Right. And I'm assuming there's a little bit of like, oh my gosh, was I just a one-hit wonder, or am I ever going to do this again?
I feel that every time I make a movie. Like, is that it?
But people in this town love to see you succeed, but they really love to see you fail.
I guess
like
so.
It's
I guess
makes them feel better.
And then maybe it's all about comebacks or whatever. But I was not even. There's no comeback. It was just like ice cold. Bye bye. Right. But the good news about being a writer director is that you're never really in director's jail, because you can always write something for yourself, right? Yes. And hire yourself as the director, and you're only as good as your last picture, and people forget the bad ones, remember the good ones, blah 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 blah. Anyways, so then New Line approached me about We're the Millers. It was a script they'd had for a long time. It was a really good premise. The script was really funny, but not quite working, and they asked me if I wanted to do it. And it was an R-rated family road trip comedy. And
do it as a rewrite, or to direct it, the whole thing? Okay.
To direct it. And I had gone in to pitch on Burt Wonderstone and didn't get the job. But then they said, hey, what about We're the Millers? And I said, let me read it. And I thought, boy, this is not my thing. Like, this is not like my kind of comedy is not super R-rated, raunchy. Yeah. That's just not my I like it, but I don't. That's not how my heart works. And so I was like, gosh, I don't know. But I had to work. Like, I needed a job, right? I needed to have a movie that comes out. And so I said yes, and I rewrote it, and I rewrote it, and I rewrote it, and then we went and made it. And Sudeikis was in it, and he's fantastic, and Jennifer's fantastic. When we got this guy Will Poulter, who stole the show.
Can I ask one question about that? Yeah. When you do the blooper where you play the Friends music, was that your idea?
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah,
I knew it. Oh.
Yeah, we were so excited about it, and it was like Jason and myself kind of came up with it. And
how about a little victory music, shall we?
Please.
I love this song.
Woo! That's
and we were like super excited to pull it off with her, yeah, that was so fun. And then,
but you were still working within comedy. You're just stretching now a little bit. It's not like you're doing a drama versus comedy. It's correct. Comedy, but just a little more raunchy than you're used to.
Yeah, and it's not my particular tempo, but I'm like, look, I need to work and I need a hit, and I'm going to fashion a lethally effective comedy widget. Here and that's what I did, and it was the first time I worked with this my editor Mike Sale, who is a genius, and he helped me so much through that process, and Dodgeball came out and got beaten up critically, but opened really nicely in the mid 30s. Low.
You said Dodgeball.
Oh, what did I say? Millers.
We're the Millers.
Okay,
I'm
just
so
making
sorry.
sure.
Sorry.
No problem.
So many movies.
So many.
So many.
And so Millers came out and it did really well I think it opened in the mid 20s and then it continued every week to make $25 million until it made 270 worldwide, which on a budget that was
Can I borrow $5?
Yeah, you can. And so then it was just a big hit.
Yeah.
And I think the most profitable or second most profitable film of the year, the most profitable original film, blah 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 blah, and then right after that, New Line's like, "What do you want to do next?" And I said, I read this script called Central Intelligence from Ike Barinholtz and David Stassen, which I thought was really funny, and it was at Universal, and then Richard Brenner and Toby Emmerich went and got it from Universal for me, and I rewrote it, and
do you get credited on the rewrites, or is it always their original project?
On Millers, I didn't, and the reason I didn't is because the way the WGA works is if you're the director on the project, you're technically an executive, and the threshold for writing credit is much higher. So you have to have, I think it's 2/3 of the work. It's an almost impossible threshold for a director who comes on to achieve. So I didn't get credit on We're the Millers. A lot of the really funny stuff was done by Sean Anders and John Morris, who are great writers and directors in their own right. They did the Daddy's Home stuff, and Instant Family. I think, they're fabulous. They're doing a musical right now with Will and Ryan Reynolds, and so a lot of the super iconic funny stuff I think is from them, and I more shaped the characters and plotting a little bit, and so they're amazing. And anyway, so but on Central, I did get screenplay credit. I think and deservedly so. Ike and David got the story credit, and we shared screenplay credit, and I think that's probably correct. And those guys are, two of the funniest guys in the world.
So was that script already written for someone like The Rock and Kevin Hart?
No, that was kind of the fun part. Is like originally the idea of Central Intelligence was that the main guy, Robbie, who ended up being played by Dwayne. The original idea was that it was written for essentially like Chris Farley or Will Ferrell. The idea was like the fat loser from high school becomes a CIA assassin and comes back to his high school reunion, and he's basically fat Jason Bourne. Like that's the idea.
Got it.
Super funny idea.
Yeah. Well, I remember when so a little backstory. We played in the same flag football team league.
Go Ninjas.
I remember you were asking some of the guys, were like, what do you guys think of Ed Helms? As the guy.
Yeah.
Was that? Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Because it was Ed and Will for Central at one point.
Will Ferrell.
Yeah. Will Ferrell. Yep. And but then when Dwayne called me up after he saw We're the Millers, he's like, I loved it. I want to do comedy.
By the way, what's that like getting a call from The Rock being like, hey, by the way, we should do movies together?
It was the greatest. It was the greatest. I mean, he's the first sort of celebrity to ever give me his cell phone number, he's the coolest. But I'd seen him on Saturday Night Live, and his Saturday Night Lives are the best.
Right.
Like, he is.
He's
so funny.
This time he's awesome.
It's awesome, right? And so, but obviously, like, Dwayne's not fat, and so
he's not.
No, not even a little bit. Believe me, I wish. And but then it all made sense to me. It's like like a cartoon light bulb went off over my head, and I was like, oh my god, this is so much better. Like, if you were
scarred as a kid,
yes. If you were heavy in high school and picked on in high school, right? What if, of course, you're going to transform yourself into The Rock, right? And isn't this such a delicious idea that here's this guy who looks like this on the outside, right? But on the inside, he's still that same kid,
still the 16-year-old kid.
Yeah, and Robbie Weirdick and
loves fanny packs and unicorns.
Yeah, exactly, big time unicorns, man.
Yeah,
so does Tony. That's so weird.
And so for me, it was like, oh, it's great. And so then I rewrote it for that, and it just opened up in a way that it hadn't before. And then Dwayne we were talking about who could play opposite him, and he's like, I think Kevin Hart would be great, and I've been a huge Kevin fan, and and so DJ and I drove to Kevin's office in the Valley, and we sat down, and I got to see those guys meet for the first time. They'd never met. They'd always liked each other, but never met. And just seeing them next to each other,
it's like twins.
I was like, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
It's
exactly literally.
Like yeah.
This guy and that's a whole other level of funny.
I was just like, this is so good. And that Kevin Hart is so talented, but he's always the funny guy, right? And so in a weird way for Central Intelligence, what was cool for me was like we made Kevin the straight man and Dwayne the funny guy. And so you took the funniest guy in the world and made him the straight man. And you took the biggest action star in the world and made him the funny guy. And I thought that was such an interesting kind of spin on it. And what's so great about Kevin is like
because it's different. It's not the typical go-to what you think.
Yeah, just a little bit of a spin on it, right? And Kevin can shoot his own shot. Like he can score whenever he wants to. And so that I never had to worry about Kevin being funny because Kevin's gonna Kevin, right? Like he's going to be great. But what's interesting about Kevin is like in the editing room, and Kevin and Ryan Reynolds are really similar in this way, in that they're both incredibly funny people, and they can each score whenever they can score the basketball whenever they want. But in the editing room, you have to be incredibly disciplined because the audience will laugh at almost anything they do. And if you're not careful, you'll put all of that shit in and you have a bad movie.
Right.
And worse, they look bad in the movie. They look like you can make them look like a clown if you put it all in. And so you have to be really careful about what you use and what you don't use. Almost more important about what you don't use.
Yeah.
But they're both super talented.
Which goes all the way back to your Dungeons and Dragons and storytelling and knowing. A great joke is a great joke, but if you string 50 of them together, you might kill the whole movie.
That's exactly right, Angelo. That you need to. It's about pace and rhythm, and if it's just a bunch of dick jokes strung together, then it feels like a swing-a-thon. And nothing's gonna.
Yeah. And are you the one who gets the final say to be like, hey, I think it's funny, but it actually steals from the whole overall piece?
Yeah. When you're doing a comedy, you're testing it a lot because a feature film comedy, like a studio sort of big tent, big audience kind of picture, you're testing it in the same way that a stand-up tests his or her routine, right? You put it up. And look, anybody who knows anything about comedy will tell you that they don't know anything about comedy, which is to say you don't know what's funny until you do it and the audience either laughs or don't. Yeah. Right. It's really simple, right? But it's not easy.
Immediate feedback.
Exactly. So George Lopez told me the story once. I only met him one time, and he told me this story that I've kept with me, which is when he was coming up as a young comedian, he was a huge Richard Pryor fan, as everybody was, and he got word that Richard Pryor was doing a set at the Comedy Store, and so he got there too late, and he didn't get to meet Richard Pryor. But out in front was Richard Pryor's yellow Rolls Royce, right? Canary yellow Rolls Royce, and George Lopez walks up to the Rolls Royce and he peeks in the back, and there he sees Richard Pryor listening to a recording of his set and making notes, right? And this is Richard Pryor, who's the biggest of all time. And George Lopez said that's all he ever needed to know. Like when you're at that level and you're still grinding and still finding like, okay, this into that, this doesn't work, lose this. And it's the same thing with a studio comedy where you're trying to make it work for everybody. And I remember early working with Mike Sale on Miller's, and there was some joke, I forget what it was. I'm like, it wasn't working, and I'm like, that's gonna suck when it doesn't work in the movie. And Mike spun around in his chair and he goes, oh yeah, no, you don't have to worry about that. If it doesn't work, it won't be in the movie. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, of course.
We just cut that out.
Yeah, we don't. So part of that process is it's discovery, your story, but you're also making sure that you're not swinging and missing.
Right. There's a lot of prudence there in just knowing what to leave out.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the same thing that works with look, what I love about, like, I don't like horror films at all. I've never really watched them, but I want to make one so desperately to learn about that genre. but what's interesting to me about comedy and horror is that they're essentially the same thing, right? That they're different reactions to surprise, but they function in the same way, which is why horror and comedy are both communal experiences, right? Why you want to watch a comedy in a theater, why you want to watch a horror film in the theater, right? Because you want to experience it with other
the audience
other
is a
apes,
character.
other apes that are making noise.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And so, but in the same way that I would imagine cutting a horror film is exactly the same as cutting a comedy, where like you're testing it to find out how you get people to react, how you scare them, and how you don't. But I do think that like when you look at some of our, the great filmmakers of our youth, like you look at James Cameron and you look at Steven Spielberg, they came up and they did horror films for oh my God, I'm blanking on the
Stan Winston. That was
no.
Jaws?
No, of course Jaws. But no, this old timey producer who did schlock B movies. And
Roger Corman.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Gosh,
Roger
I was
Corman.
going to drive home and be like,
yeah.
Roger, because he started in his model shop, I believe.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
James Cameron
that's what he
did.
said in his
Yeah.
book.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. So
futurist.
So when you're making horror films, right? Which is why, like, look, Guillermo del Toro started in horror, right? Horror directors. Peter Jackson, horror, right?
Blade 2.
Is that right?
That was Guillermo.
That was Guillermo?
Right?
I don't know.
But when you start in horror, you learn really quickly about how to scare your audience, how to manipulate your audience, right?
It's the feedback. You're finding out what works and what doesn't.
And that translates into drama really well. Really, really well. So
going back to Central Intelligence, when you're working with guys like Dwayne and Kevin, are they just open to doing whatever? Like, because, I mean, Dwayne being like the big macho action guy, now being like the reserved unicorn wearing, like, he just think that was funny as hell, and like,
thought it was funny
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't quite go that far, but yeah, I mean, he this is the thing he signed up for, and the thing we talked about, and he was game for it. He loved that part of it. Dwayne likes to play characters. He likes to challenge himself in a way that he hasn't done before. And both Kevin and Dwayne are all, very, very open. There are very few actors that I've worked with. There are some that aren't open to trying, to experimenting, to, I guess my approach is always when I'm making a movie, there's essentially two things. The first is I make sure that I talk with the actor about the script and see if there's any questions or problems, just either large or small or anything like that before we're on set, before the meter's running, right? So let's have I want all of these conversations, and I'm happy to make adjustments, and as long as they work for me as well. But like, let's talk it through. So like what I'm trying to get, you're on board for. What I never want to have happen is like we're on set and they go, yeah, I don't understand why I'm doing this, or I would never my character would never blah blah blah. That time has passed.
Train has left the station.
Yes, we've made these right, but I also leave room for discovery and for trying things. And I'm a very yes and director. There's very, very, very few times where an actor has said, hey, I think I want to do this, where I'm like, I don't think so, because I've been wrong plenty of times. And there are times where like, I'll be in the editing room and I'll be like, I wish I had this, or I should have, like I remember when an actor one time said, I think I should hug him in this scene, right? I should just hug him. And I was like, that is fucking what? Like, great, let's do it. Right? Like
in your head, you're like, that's never gonna.
I'm like, that's never gonna make it. And then I'm in the editing room and I'm like, oh my God, it's great. What it was, I think. And actors are incredible. Like they're in that character. They can feel it in a way that even if you wrote it, you can't. And so I've learned to trust that and to be open to all of that, because it's free to do another take. There's absolutely no reason not to.
Right.
I'm in charge of whether it ever sees the light of day. And I get all the credit at the end anyways, so I don't care. Like, let's go. Like, if you have an idea, like, let's get weird. Let's try something different. I never, especially on comedies, like I never need 6 takes of the same joke. Like, I don't need that. I need
six flavors.
Yeah, 6 flavors or two flavors and 4 different punchlines. Back to when you're shaping it, like sometimes the joke doesn't work because the punchline's no good, right? Sometimes the joke doesn't work because the premise hasn't been set properly. Sometimes the joke doesn't work because 2 jokes before didn't work, you know?
Yeah.
But having those options are, really, really, really important. So most of the actors that I've worked with have been lovely and game.
Central Intelligence comes out, huge hit, funny as hell.
Yep.
So you kind of come out of your comfort zone a little bit after that because you do a action movie.
Yeah.
With Dwayne as well. Again,
Yeah.
so obviously that relationship is strong.
Yep.
But then you go to do an action movie.
Yep.
Are you like, what am I doing? Why am I doing an action movie?
No.
Was that something you always wanted to do also?
Something I've always wanted to do.
You're like, it didn't work with the dramas.
Yeah. Not so much, but this was like a big action movie that's, very die-hardy, and that's a movie I love that, I don't know if anybody else has ever seen Die Hard.
It's probably the best Christmas movie.
It's probably the best.
A few people have seen it.
Yeah.
That and A Christmas Story. Like,
Shit, lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
It's so good.
No, never seen it.
But what's great about Die Hard is it's like 2 jokes away from being a straight comedy. Like,
Right.
It is.
so funny. So funny. Did you know that Shane Black actually had the title for Die Hard? Did you know that?
No.
I did not know.
Yeah, it was called the book. It was based on a book. I forget the title, like Any Other Day or something like that. And then Shane Black had gave them the title Die Hard. He was just noodling. It was one of the titles that he was messing around with.
Huh.
But he obviously did Lethal Weapon, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and Long Kiss Goodnight. But he
did
gave
Predator
them Die
too,
Hard.
didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did. So for me, I always wanted to transition away from comedy into action and action comedy and bigger palettes, right? And I had this idea while we were cutting Central Intelligence, and I pitched it to Dwayne, and he loved it, and we went off and did it, and I couldn't have done Skyscraper had I not done Central Intelligence,
Right,
which is a straight action comedy.
Yep.
And Miller's has a little action in it, right? Dodgeball almost none,
right,
in sports, and so it was a progress, a processional approach.
Yeah.
And so then Skyscraper, straight action movie, and we had a bunch of jokes, but we couldn't get them to work, and I couldn't figure out why. But the reason, almost no jokes worked in the movie is because Dwayne's family was trapped in a burning building, and like if he stops to crack wise, it just lands flat.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that until we put it in front of audiences. I'm like, why aren't these jokes working? They should work, and they just didn't work. So we finished Skyscraper, and as we're finishing that, while we were shooting Skyscraper, I came up with Red Notice, and pitched away. And Red Notice, that's a whole other story. But Red Notice I think represents the culmination of an almost 20-year career for me, in terms of learning how to make movies, how to tell stories. It's an action adventure comedy, which is like I think my wheelhouse, and it's a culmination of not only just the 18, 20 years of doing this, of writing and learning and failing and learning and failing and learning and failing, and succeeding every so often, but also 20 years of being in the business and learning how the machine works and how to pull the levers and when to pull the levers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then for Red Notice to come out and do what it's done, it's staggering. Like the numbers are just it's hard to fathom, but really, really easy to enjoy.
So this is the first movie you've done with a streaming service.
Yeah.
You shot it during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm sure was miserable. It took like 2 years to probably make.
Yeah, we had to take 6 months off. It was terrible.
So where was I going to go with this question? The biggest budget, I'm sure. How'd you end up getting? I mean, obviously Dwayne was already attached. Yep. Do you just go out to like, who else do we think? Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot. Let's just get the 3 biggest stars in the world. And
well, so I pitched Dwayne. He said yes. And so when the biggest movie star in the world, according to the Body Mass Index, says that he wants to make a movie, then you better start writing. So I worked on the pitch, and when we went around town to pitch it. And I had in my notebook, I had Gal Gadot. I never met her, but a fan. Like she was who I spoke as though I knew her in the pitch. Like this is who you should picture. And so we went to 11 places, and we had 11 offers, which never happens. Like you go to 11 places, you get 1 offer usually, or 2 if you're lucky. Is
that a combination of Dwayne being huge, you guys already having success, you knowing what you're doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all of those things. It has to do with Skyscraper, the trailer had just come out and people liked the trailer. Dwayne had Jumanji that had come out and made $1 billion. And so the timing was right.
Got it.
The pitch was very, very good. It was the best pitch I've ever done. And then so it was a combination of all and then having a track record and having Dwayne,
right?
And and so it became a knife fight between a couple places. Angelo,
no, that's good for you. No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's like I hope everybody gets a chance to be in what amounts to a bidding war or competitive situation. The only thing that there's only really, there's no downside, but the only thing that they don't tell you is that typically, if you're in that sort of competitive situation, you have a track record and you have experience with these people that are offering to buy your thing. So you have relationships and people you like, but you can only take one person to the prom, and so you got to break some hearts at the end, and that part's never fun, right? Because you like everybody usually, and so we sold it to Universal, and then I got on a plane and flew to London to pitch Gal. My producer Bo Flynn is like, she's shooting Wonder Woman, you got to go pitch her. So I flew to London for 18 hours, land, meet Gal, pitch her the story. And
is she dressed as Wonder Woman?
She is not. She is.
Because if you have a picture of that, we'd love to see it. So this is a part where you kick the door down.
She is. By the way, I don't know if you guys know her, but she's the coolest.
Yeah, we hang out with her all the time. Yeah, I actually
she's coming on next week.
I canceled hanging out with her to hang out with you.
Yeah, well, bad choice. She's the coolest, and she's obviously incredibly beautiful. But she's Israeli, and she's been beautiful since she was 14. So men have been lying to her whole life, and so her. So her bullshit meter is off the charts. You cannot snow her. Mm-hmm. She is very direct, as she does not fuck around. She's very funny and very cool. But of all the people we pitched, she and Tom Rothman actually had the smartest questions and were the most insightful about the pitch. So she's razor sharp. And so I pitched her, and then she said yes. Like she didn't say yes in the room, but the next day I heard she's in, and then I wrote the script and as I was writing it, I wrote it with Ryan Reynolds' sort of voice in my ear, and I sent it to Ryan. I've known him for, 15 years, just in passing, not really, not buddy, but we had lunch a few times and talked about a few things, and so I sent him the script, and I wrote him a note saying, I wrote you. I wrote you a great role, even though you're Canadian. I hope you like it. And I said, look, you don't even have to call me. Like, if you like it and you're in, just send me a topless picture of B. Arthur, and I know you're in. And I don't know what I was thinking. So I sent it to him.
No, it's for your wife. It's asking for a friend. Asking for a friend.
And so it was a Friday. It got sent to him, but he was in London. I didn't know that, so he's like way ahead. And so I went, fell asleep, and then the next morning I woke up, turned my phone on. And the first thing that pops up is a topless picture of B. Arthur. And I run downstairs to my wife. I'm like, Sarah,
I'm coming out. We're breaking up.
We're breaking up. And so Ryan said yes. And so I got my 3 first choices, and then we went and made it. But the streaming thing has been wild. My first streaming film, I don't think I ever want to go back. Like,
I was just going to ask you about that, because people that are listening and watching, so what you just said, you sold it to Universal. So how does it get to Netflix?
Oh yeah.
Like, how does that, like, what's the...
So that was tricky. The whole process has been tricky. So I wrote 2 drafts for Universal, and we had Ryan, and we had Gal, and we had DJ. And when you sell in a competitive situation, you can drive what are called terms, or progress to production terms. So we had a deal with Universal that if our film budgeted out at a certain number, a very reasonable number, that it was an automatic green light. And which is kind of horseshit, because they can always wiggle out of it.
Right.
But that's what the deal was. And so we got to this point, we had all 3 stars, and the budget was, because of the above the line, because of getting all 3 stars, it was a little bit higher than contractual, right? Not a ton, but a little bit. And Universal said, look, we love you, but we don't think this is a good bet for us at this number. It's an original idea. We're nervous about if we can make this back theatrically. You know, we'd have to make 3x or 4x the budget, and we just don't believe we can do it. You know, and it was a really hard conversation, and they were very classy about it. And we said, we totally understand. You know, we'd like to take it somewhere else. And Universal could have made it really hard for us to go anywhere else, but they were, you know, we're all friends. We've all made movies together. You know, it's a long business, and they were like, cool. Like, if you can find a place, great. And Netflix was waiting in the weeds, and they just went shoop. And they said,
"Does Netflix have to pay Universal for something?"
Yeah, Netflix sort of pot committed, and they said, you know, because we wanted to make a movie at a certain price, like we wanted to make a certain kind and size of movie, and Universal was not down for that, and Netflix was completely down.
They're all in,
all in on it. And yeah, so what happens is essentially Netflix reimburses Universal for their script fees, and plus, you know, it's usually 15% overhead, which is just an upcharge. So we went to Universal. We went to Netflix, and we went and made it. And
this is also during a global pandemic and all that stuff. So they might have had fair nerve. I mean, those nerves sound a little bit.
Well, this was before the pandemic.
Oh, this was before.
Yeah. So we went and started making the movie, and the pandemic hit about halfway through shooting Red Notice. And part of why our budget, because when we started, we weren't, you know, the most expensive Netflix film or whatever.
Right.
But what happened was, when we shut down and we had to come back for COVID, we had to come back, and there's no processes or procedures to shoot a film of our scale under a pandemic. There was no vaccine. And so the cost to keeping everybody safe, we quarantined NBA bubble style. We had to rent out 2 hotels. We had to rebuild everything.
Probably tripled your budget.
I know it did not triple it, but it added a shit ton on top. What's fascinating about Netflix, and we can talk about streaming versus theatrical. I've got a lot of opinions, but so when it went from Universal to Netflix, it was tough for me because, like, you know, I grew up on theatrical, and you know, every filmmaker wants to be number one at the box office.
Right.
You want 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. You want to be nominated for all of you. Like, you want all of it, right? Every time, even when you don't deserve it. Sometimes, especially when you don't deserve it.
We just want to make a movie.
We just want something.
Yeah, that will happen. And so I sort of made a list when the a pro and con list between Universal and Netflix when that happened, and when the pro list is like 6 things and the con list is like 2 things, and those 2 things are just about your own ego, then you know you're in good shape, and you know, and we all know ego is about insecurity, and that's where it comes from. And so once you can kind of square yourself with that, look, I knew before Red Notice came out that more people were going to see Red Notice its opening weekend on Netflix than will have seen all of my other films in their entire theatrical run combined. That's how big Netflix is.
Well, you were telling me that there's something that they now judge it on in the first 30 days. That's equal to what it would have been at the box office or something along those lines.
It's a little bit tricky, and it involves math. Stop
talking.
So Netflix does their opening by 28-day markers, right?
Okay.
Because, you know, some films can be on Netflix, you know, 3 years, and others are only 3 months. And how do you compare the two? So they compare them by saying, look, your release window is 28 days, and we judge based on the number of view hours in those 28 days, right? It used to be subscribers who watched. Remember, there was that thing where it's like, hey, if you watch 2 minutes, it counts.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist anymore. But what's interesting is the part that's tricky is that Netflix doesn't know how many people are watching. They just can tell how many view hours are watching, but they don't know.
You have a room of 30 people.
30 people, and most people don't watch movies by themselves. Most people watch with one other person minimum, right? And when you talk about something like Red Notice, which is not a family film, but is a film for families, right? Like you can 8 to 80, left, right, politically, men, women, doesn't matter. It's a big tent movie. That number is more than 2, right? But Netflix internally multiplies their subscribers who watch by 2.15, which is the average number of profiles they have. Now, Red Notice is probably closer to 3, maybe a little over, but call it 2. So you can't really equate a Netflix movie with a theatrical movie. You can't say that that people would have gotten up off their ass and gone to the theater and bought a ticket, right? That's bullshit, right? Yeah. The way, people went and saw Spider-Man in the theater because they want to see Spider-Man in the theater, right? And I get that. So you can't really equate box office, but what you can do, it's helpful to look at it the other way. So, for instance, take the biggest film of all time, right? The biggest theatrical film of all time, Avengers Endgame, right? It's Titanic or Avatar now because they re-released it, but let's just call it Endgame, which is made $2.79 billion at the box office, right? Massive. Now, average ticket price is $10, call it, around the world, give or take, but for easy math. So that's 279 million people went and saw Avengers, right? Now, Red Notice had 122 million subscriber accounts watch its movie, watch Red Notice in the first 28 days. And if you multiply that
times the
2.15, right? And that's probably on the low side, right? You're at, I think 270 something million people. And it's probably more than that. I promise you, how much time do you have for math? Because it's going to take about 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's usually where they're walking away when I'm talking stuff.
Do you like long division? But that's how big
Netflix is.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's moving, and I think that people under 25, they don't make any distinction between watching on a flat screen or watching in the theater. It's all
or on the phone.
It's all to them content.
Yeah.
Which is the grossest thing of all time to say.
You want to see yours on the theater with the Dolby surround sound.
Of course you do.
Now, does Netflix just say, listen, we got the biggest director ever, let's just do 20 more movies with them? Do they just sign you up?
They're very happy. We're very happy with the results, and so am I. And and we're talking about
I've got a short film about a puppy. I was hoping you could direct it, maybe.
In Pittsburgh?
Yeah, could you please would you guys put Mysteries of Pittsburgh on your platform? No, we will not. No, but there's a lot of conversation about continuing the Red Notice
franchise kind of.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I poked around on a little bit of IMDb. Are you slated discussing, rumored to be doing We're the Millers 2?
No, that we had there was a moment there, a window. We had a great script written by Adams Ezekiel, which is basically like a Very Miller's Christmas, which I was really excited about, and we just couldn't get everybody lined up, and I think those things like it was just a scheduling thing, and once you miss your window, I think you miss your window on those things. Like if we did it right away, I think it'd be great, but the fact that I think everybody's moved on.
Got it.
I know you mentioned a couple stories ago that you wanted to do Magnum PI, you missed out on that. Were there any other films that you were slated to do that you kind of just timing didn't happen, or were you offered like a big movie and said, no, I'm working on this?
No, I've not missed in that regard. Magnum PI, it wasn't like they were going to make it and I missed out. They decided not to make it.
Got it. And it's a TV show now.
Again, for the first time. I wrote a draft of The Umbrella Academy as a feature that I was really proud of, that I wanted to direct, and then that didn't happen, but they ended up making a TV show. But these things, come around. The next thing I'm working on is The Division, which is based on a Tom Clancy video game, a Ubisoft game that I love and play, and it stars Jessica Chastain and Jake Gyllenhaal. They're producing.
Never heard of them.
Big gamer, and Jake and Jessica are awesome.
This guy, you're way cooler.
I don't know about Tony's awesome.
How much
thanks,
did you pay
buddy.
him to say that?
By the way, we're gonna repeat that line.
Yeah.
He's just going to be in his car listening to it over and over and over.
That's the truth, man. And so I hope that's my next movie.
Is that a Netflix thing? Is that a studio thing?
No. Well, I mean, yes, it's a Netflix thing.
Oh, okay.
They have it, and I'm rewriting the draft right now.
Nice.
But there's, what's gonna be kind of cool is I think I'm gonna spend a large part of 22 writing.
Awesome.
Hopefully I get to make the division. But it's weird, like this job is so strange. You don't get to greenlight your own stuff. You don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm presently unemployed.
Yeah.
Like that's
You're doing pretty good for unemployed.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the bread line later. Congratulations, your movie's a hit. You're fired. Like that's kind of That's
Good luck
what it
looking
is.
for work.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I can get you on unemployment. Don't worry about it.
I thank you.
Didn't we read that you were were you up for Ant-Man? And then or someone backed out and you were going to be the next director in line, didn't happen. Would you ever do a Marvel? Do you want to do a Marvel movie? Is that like you do?
Desperately. Like well, Ant-Man was a little funky. Edgar Wright was going to do it. I talked to them a little bit about doing the first one. Was not really for me. And then the second one, Edgar left the project and they were, all like about to direct, about to make it.
Yeah.
And so they had to find, sorry, I'm talking about the first one. The first one was, I got them confused. The first one, Edgar left the project and they were already prepped and they're like, we got to, find somebody. And it was not for me. And they, I think they picked Peyton Reed, he did a great job.
Yeah.
I thought. And no, but the one Marvel movie I want to do, which I don't think they're gonna do, my dream Marvel project would be Hulk versus Wolverine. That's what I'd want to do. Ooh. Especially the Lindelof run, which I thought was really good.
Awesome.
I mean, it's possible.
Kevin Feige can do anything he wants.
Yeah.
I just happen to have that script. Also.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay,
Hulk
great.
versus Wolverine. I'll give it to you later. Don't
Thank
worry
you.
about it.
Thank you very much.
It's in the trunk.
We sort of like end the sequence with any interview we do with a theoretical question, unless you have anything else you wanted to fire out.
No, I think this has been awesome, buddy. Thanks.
I
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for that.
Well, so our
blab.
This is purely theoretical, but if you hadn't have made it at directing or some sort of filmmaking, what, given your talent, your time, your passion, what you already like to do naturally, is there something else you could see yourself doing, or is this it?
No, I mean, if I didn't do this, I always wanted to play quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, but I don't have that ability. So,
I mean, you can make a movie about yourself doing that.
Maybe I will. No, I think I would have. I think I would want to get involved in politics.
Okay. Okay.
I think, as gross as that sounds, like trying to.
We need good people in politics.
Make a difference. Yeah. In that way, I just think there's so much. Just so much wrong with it. So I think I'd want to get involved in maybe local politics, or I don't even know if I would do statewide stuff or federal stuff.
But I think you have the right tools between helping lead a team, achieving a goal, communicating across multiple platforms. I mean, that takes a special set of skills to be able to do that at a high level.
I think there is some overlap between directing, leading a project that big, and leading any group. Yeah, but I wouldn't say I like politics, but I'm interested in them. So
hey, Ronald Reagan.
There you go, buddy.
Fine. The actor.
Yeah,
the actor.
What a president of the United States. What a terrible job. That's just tough. Tough.
Well, Rawson, thank you so much for coming here
Angelo.
today and
Tony.
just
Appreciate
kind of telling us, like, it's so nice to peek behind the curtain and hear this stuff. I can't read any of that insight really on a blog or an article, or get that in 5 minutes in passing in conversation.
And again, everyone sees your wins.
Yeah.
But I mean, you failed
so
many more times.
All the time.
I mean, Dodgeball almost never got made.
Yes, all of this
which is I mean,
well, hopefully that will give some encouragement to people to know, hey, it's really hard and you're going to hear a lot of no's and you're going to fail and you could still be successful at what
That's
you
right.
do.
Yeah.
So
thank you guys for the time.
Thanks,
all right,
brother.
we're going to sign off here finally. To everyone who is watching us out there, YouTube,
Spotify, listening, iTunes,
Google Play. Hopefully someday on Netflix too.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. This is season 2 starting out with a big personality, incredible resume, great storytelling. We're going to have a good lineup this season 2 of some people. We won't say any names yet, but we continue to raise the bar. Appreciate you watching, listening. Hit that like, subscribe button. Tell your friends about it. Share it. Keeps us on the air and doing what we do. Rawson, thank you again.
Thank you,
buddy.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Man.
Thanks, guys.